I came in here this afternoon with a very fixed set of views. The conflicts that are going on in my mind have been going on in my mind since this bill saw the light of day. Before I speak properly on the bill, I want to once again condemn the way this legislation has been run through this House. It's absolutely disgraceful. And Minister, it is your name that will be on it and your party's name that will be labelled with this. What are ye thinking of that you would allow this to happen? Why would you come in here and ram through legislation when you know 4,000 emails I've had to date from those on one side of the argument and a couple of hundred emails from those on the other side of the argument? I've also had some pretty harrowing phone calls, particularly with women of my own age group. I was born and reared in Salthill in Galway. It was a pretty, I suppose, easy life to grow up in. We were all fairly well-to-do. None of us were that hungry. I guess we were at the bottom end of the Salthill society. My old man was a gas fitter. But I remember with horror girls who got pregnant because until they disappeared, they were the talk of the neighbourhood, every neighbourhood. The shame that was brought down on them, wrongly brought down on them. Many of them, because of this legislation and because of some of the things that have happened in recent years, are reliving those experiences. One of my very good friends, she was living outside the country when she got pregnant. Her father was a particularly Victorian man in his views of the world. And when she contacted home to tell them she was pregnant, the plan was to go to London. She was living in the UK anyway. The plan was to go to London and have the child there. And to her absolute surprise, her father said, "No, you're my daughter, you've done nothing wrong. Come home." And he looked after her because he loved her and because in his view, with his Victorian mind, she had done nothing that was abnormal or unnatural. But she was one of the very lucky ones. I mentioned the other day about the woman who met with her daughter and started to tell her about the circumstances of her birth and then said to her at the very end, "Now you know it all, I don't ever want to see or hear from you again," and walked away. I had a phone call that night from another woman who told me that when she met her mother explained, this woman met her daughter, and the daughter had a notebook with her and a number of questions about family health, family background, hereditary diseases, all of the things that we need to know. And when the questions were completed, this woman said, "Well, now that I've met you, perhaps we could," her mother said to her, "Now that I've met you, perhaps we could meet again." And she said, "No, thank you. I don't want to meet you again. I found out all I need to know. You dumped me 35 years ago. Goodbye." And that's the sort of thing that's dragged up. I'm mindful of two brothers that were sent to Letterfrack. They were sent to Letterfrack because their mother fell pregnant a year after their father died. The family farm was taken from her and given to a relative, and she was sent to a mental hospital. And believe it or not, almost 70 years later, one of the surviving brothers met his half-brother for the first time. 70 years. And they were only living 20 miles apart. Never knew one another. Now, what Senator Éireann said, I can totally concur with where she's coming from. But the state, and you in this case are the embodiment of the state. The state promised citizens that if you come forward, we will treat you with confidentiality. What you tell us, we will keep to help us write a report, but you need never, ever, ever fear anything. My colleague Senator Boyan said there are people who were in institutions. And by the way, I need to put on record, some of the people that were in institutions were tremendous, wonderful people who did everything they could for those in their care, but some were pretty horrible people. Some of them came forward and told the stories they had to tell. Would they have told those stories had they not been assured of confidentiality and anonymity? Would they? I don't think they would. And I think if there was only one person went in and said, I want to remain anonymous, irrespective of the hundreds that may want to tell their story, and there are hundreds who want to tell their story, but this is not the forum for that story. They have to be given a right to tell their story. And if you're going to do something worthwhile, Minister, do set up a public forum where people can come forward and tell their full story. But in this case, the state promised that what transpired in those rooms, and as my colleague Senator Boyan would tell you, didn't encompass all of the institutions. It was only a number of institutions. But I can guarantee you that there are people watching the TV today, and there are people who are saying, I wish your man would sit down because I want to know everything. And there are other people somewhere else who are saying, oh my God, at least somebody is trying to protect my confidential information. We cannot go back on our word. We cannot turn around and say to somebody today, I promise you confidentiality, and tomorrow say, well, do you know what? I didn't mean full confidentiality. You know, it's like when somebody tells us a secret. I have a huge issue with people telling me secrets, because I always have somebody that I trust emphatically that I will share something with. And of course they trust somebody else, and somebody else trusts somebody else, and the next thing you're into Chinese walls and Chinese whispers going on around the place. We cannot go back on our word. No matter what we do, we cannot go back on our word. And Minister, if this goes through and something happens in years to come, it will be on our heads in this House that we allowed it to happen. If there is one person out there who participated in this, who wants to be 100% certain that they will never be given away, they will never have their story told, it will be encompassed in a report somewhere, but their name will never, ever, ever be shown. They have that right. And you, me, and nobody else has a right to change it. And having listened to my two colleagues, Senator Higgins and Senator Éireann, there is a discussion to have here, and we can't have that discussion in one afternoon, ramming through all stages of a bill. This actually should have gone to a committee. It should have had lots of discussion around it. We should have explored all of the options. We don't have that today. I was deeply moved by what Senator Éireann and Senator Higgins said today. Particularly Senator Higgins, when she spoke about the number of people who want to tell their story. But if there's one person who gave information to this, that person is entitled to full and total confidentiality. We cannot break our word. This is Ireland, the state, that gave its word. And nobody, but nobody, should undermine the word of the state. So I'm asking you, Minister, I know that there's a rush on to get this into the Dáil. I'm asking you, accept the amendments. Do the best you can for the people that put their trust in the state. I have huge issues internally about Senator McDougall's amendment, but I fully accept the principle behind it. If you give your word, you keep your word, and that's it. There is no middle ground. There is no, well, we didn't quite mean total confidentiality. We meant confidentiality, but we might change our mind as time goes on. But if you listen to the people who presented here this afternoon, Senator Boyne would go through you when he talks about the experience he has. And he's the only one here with empirical evidence at his fingertips, with personal knowledge. And he's saying, I think, more or less the same as what I said myself, which is we accept the right of every individual to trace their heritage. We accept the right of every individual to tell their story. But it's too late in this piece of legislation. It should not happen. And Minister, if you let it go through, it'll be on your head, nobody else's.